Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talk Openly. I'm Jac, and I'm here with my co-host, Daniel. Hello,
Hello.
Daniel.
Hi, Jac. Hi, everybody. How's it going?
It's going okay. We were just kind of laughing at the very present reality of uncertainty in our show tonight, partly because the internet is always a little bit funky and uncertain. So you might see some, frozen faces. Um, and also, yeah, a little bit unprepared tonight, gotta say. I am, at least.
Yeah, yeah. Same. I mean, I have plenty of experience with uncertainty for
Right.
sure. Now, when it comes to applying Buddhist principles to uncertainty, that I might be woefully unprepared to talk about as well, but we'll explore it. We'll explore it together. We'll see what we come up with.
Right. Always an exploration, never perfection. Good
Right, right.
God.
Yeah, seriously. Exactly that. Oh my gosh, Jac. Oh wow. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like this is really like the perfect show for tonight. I
Okay.
had so talk about like uncertainty. I was quite certain that I was going to make it on time tonight for the show, and that I'd have plenty of time to sort of like do all my usual sort of prep and like have my water and everything ready. And I had to take my daughter to a volleyball game, and
Ooh.
normally it's just like two games and it's over, usually relatively quickly, right? And no problem. Today it was like a neck and neck game,
Yeah.
like yeah, which is fun, good.
Yeah.
But then of course it went into like overtime and they had to play like a third game, and then there was like
Yes.
stuff going on afterward. And I was like, oh my God, I was like looking at the clock and I was just like, I don't, oh my, I was kind of freaking out. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it, right? And then it all lined up, right? And I was like, okay, here we go. And I haul butt home, and I get inside and I flip on the computer, and oh no, my internet's off, and I'm logged out of like my password tool.
Yep.
And I was like, I can't get into Zoom, and I'm not out, like, and so I just as fast as I could, got everything on like lined up, and like jumped in here, right? So like I'm
Right at
fresh
seven
out of the,
o'clock.
yeah, man. Like things did not work out the way that I was certain that they were going to work out today.
Yeah, us and our silly plans, right? Yeah, I definitely was feeling that a little bit today as well with my kind of everyday work life. I'm part of this like EDI group at work, so like equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we were supposed to have this like whole day long retreat on Thursday with our management to kind of work on this stuff together. Was really looking forward to it. It's something we've been planning for a long time. And, we've been working on getting this facilitator for like over a year. Like it's been a lot, right? I get a message from someone today that like, hey, it might not happen. Like
Oh,
management might cancel this on us.
oh,
And I guess the reason was that like one of the co-facilitators backed out for, unforeseen circumstances. And then this new facilitator management wasn't comfortable with because she's like part of this union that does organizing at UW. So anyways, messy stuff, right? And finally we get notified that it's not happening. And it's,
oh.
under 48 hours notice, right? And so like I've got, I was going to be switching my hours so that I would have Wednesday off instead of Thursday. And so like, I scheduled all this stuff, like my therapy. I'm gonna see Llama tomorrow, right? Because
Yeah,
he's up
yeah.
here. And so then I was thinking like, oh crap, does that mean that I have to work tomorrow, right? Because like, I no longer have that thing on Thursday, so I'm gonna have to work
Mm.
tomorrow. So then like, of course, what happens is like, I just launch into the kind of like must find certainty mode, right? I start texting, like I'm texting Llama like, hey, can I come visit you early, like 6 a.m. tomorrow before work? Like, like just ridiculous, right? Like trying to make plans to make it work out. And trying to change my therapy time. Anyways, what ended up happening was I was just like, okay, I'm being a little bit insane right now. I'm just going to take this as a sign from the universe or whatever, my karma, that I need to take the day off tomorrow. I just take the time off. I don't have a lot of time off, so it kind of pissed me off, but take the time off and just, make it easy, go spend time with Llama, do my appointment. It's fine.
Yeah. Wow.
It was so funny, that like race to make it like, okay, I'm like, all right, I need to know what I'm doing. And everyone who's involved needs to know what I'm doing and what we're doing together. It was like, okay, it's messy.
Yeah, it's all sliding out of control. So I need to like really move quickly to juggle and make sure that it's all in control.
Right. I was just imagining that as you said slide, like imagining kind of like a mudslide and trying to like kind of like tack things together as like it's just coming downhill. Nothing you can do about it.
No, it's that's a nice surrender though, at the end where you're like, I'll just use one of my time days off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I did catch myself. That is the thing. We keep talking. I think I keep coming back to this and you keep coming back to it too, when we talk about how while we may still engage with some of like the maybe unhelpful patterns of behavior that we're used to, we at least catch it. We're becoming more aware of it, And so that actually happened today where I was like, I had texted Llama like a couple ideas of like, here's some times that I can come out. And I was about to text him another one when I was just like, okay, he hasn't responded. This is probably, I should just take this as a sign that I need to just wait. Like, can I wait 2 hours until the end of my workday? Like 2 hours. It's really not a lot of time.
Yeah.
To just see how things shake out with other people in my life, like just, it's okay. And so I did, that's what I did. I didn't send the text. I just waited. And within an hour I got the response and figured it out. So
isn't that funny? I know those moments of not getting the reply as quickly as you wish that you would, or sometimes you don't get it at all. And I do take it the same way where I'm like, take a breather, like, relax the expectation that you need to get a response right now. And maybe actually, why don't you sit with us for a bit and see if it doesn't. A lot of times a lot of times it's like when we get into these messy situations where we respond like this, it's a lot like having like a knot, like something that's all knotted up. And, like if you really start pulling hard, it gets worse and worse and worse. But if you just if you just sort of like leave it alone for a second and then come back with a relaxed attitude, sometimes you're just like, you just pull on one of the strings and then you're like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
And you just sort of like, and then the knot's all unwound, right?
Right. Yeah, it is one of those like kind of crazy making paradoxes, where it's like, okay, you're just making it worse. All the effort is just making it worse.
Right.
Reduce the effort.
Right, but you got to balance it because there is, I mean, on my end of the spectrum, a lot of times there's just sort of like throwing my hands up and saying, screw it. Never mind then, right? So like there's always the middle way between, all of these things, including effort and lack of effort.
Right. Yeah, I'm the over efforter.
Right. Yeah. I'm the under efforter.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Yeah.
So we'll strike a balance between us.
Have to. Yes. That's what friends are for.
That's right. I certainly value that in our friendship.
Yeah, same. Well, we jumped in a little bit already to our topic for tonight of uncertainty and dealing with uncertainty and whatnot. But I would love to hear a little bit more about how your week has been otherwise, and life and practice and all the things.
Oh my gosh, is there a difference?
Right.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty darn crappy. But that's sort of on the relative end of the things, right? Like there is this, it's a weird sort of mix of like really difficult, hard stuff going on. And at the same time, this recognition like, well, yeah, that's temporary, right? So we'll get into more of that, I think, later. But basically, I think I've talked about it the last couple of weeks, but some of the stuff that I've been talking about I've had some financial issues with my business at work. It all has come to a head. I had to lay off some people from my company, including a really near and dear friend of mine, who's been with us for years. Had to issue severe salary cuts for myself and my partners, which will have this ripple effect that is going to impact my living situation, my family, so there's a lot going on, which would normally be, I mean, it is stressful, I'm not going to lie. But it's odd to me where so there is part of the reason we're talking about this is because there's so much uncertainty right now. Like it's all like sort of life has pulled the rug out from underneath, me. And I kind of like it. I recognize it. I'm like, oh, I see, right? Like I'm not insensitive to myself or to others that are impacted. We're all in this together. A lot of people are in this together. And so there's a sensitivity towards that. And but at the same time, there's this sort of like recognition of like, yeah, I can see how this has all come about. I get it. Like I don't mean to, use this as a cliche or anything, but I can kind of see the cause and effect, the karmic aspect of like how things came to be. And I'm not in a negative way or anything, just like, yeah, okay, I get it. How did all these dependencies arise, and, why is it now painful for, many people and that kind of thing. And yeah, so like it's sort of like we were talking about last week, like when you were not seeing Mount Rainier because of the smoke, when you're just like this, oh, oh, right, this is how it is, right? And so there's a decent amount of that going on. And so what's been interesting is watching. So my practice has been so regular, so consistent for so long now. And between the work stuff going on and changes in like schedules with kids and family and work and everything, there's been like severe time constraints. Like I'm like up early, like really early, and out of the house, and then in late and whatever. And so for 2 days, my practice suffered. My training suffered. I actually didn't sit. And I did take refuge, though. I did take refuge. Unfortunately, it was a false refuge.
How
So,
so?
so yeah. Well, what happened was, I was like, it was a couple of nights ago, and I was like feeling so just like, oh man, I finally, it's the end of a hard day. This all sucked. And I was like, man, I would love maybe drinking a joint right now. It finally popped up, and then I was like, no, I don't actually want that. So I was like, nah, I'm good. Let that one pass.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I was hungry, and so I went to the store, got some food, and I got half a pint or whatever, Ben and Jerry's non-dairy fish food, which is crazy, right? So thing is really, really good. And I ate the whole damn thing, Jac. The
Yeah, you
whole
did.
thing. And I knew, I saw it. I was asking myself, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was very present with it. You know what I mean? Like I savored each and every bite. But the whole time I was like, you could have just had a big glass of water, had a little bit of food, sat down and meditated, And so like there was this, like I could see that aspect of it. And I was like, well, there was this part of me that was like, how's this refuge treating you, Daniel? Like, how
Uh-huh.
is it making samsara suck less? Is it working? And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, the temporary satisfaction was so limited, and then I had to wake up at the butt crack of dawn the next day to go to make it to the gym, right?
Yeah.
and I was at the gym and I was like, how was that pint of Ben and Jerry's, Daniel? How's that working for you? Don't you wish that you would have just meditated instead, right? So I had a little bit of that. So then this morning I woke
Good
up and I
work.
was,
Good work, though.
oh,
Good
oh,
work.
dude,
Yeah,
I'm telling
yeah,
you, man.
got
So,
it.
so again, I'm up at, I mean, just at a crazy hour this morning, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I can meditate. I got to get going. And then I was like, dude, that's not working for you. And the whole notion that you have to sit for a particular length of time or in a certain posture or whatever, get over it. Like that's actually not true. Just take a minute and watch your mind. And so I did. I took like 12 or 15 minutes or something like that and
Yes.
just sat in a chair and just sat and watched. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's how things are. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And and it started my day off just right. So I think I don't think I'm gonna lose traction there. I'm pretty sure that I can feel where I'm like, yeah, I don't think anything's working quite as well as meditation is. So
Right.
so that's how my meditation and daily practice, my training and my practice is
Good for you, man. That's some good training right there.
going.
Yeah, no, seriously, like when we can have those moments of like really indulging in the sense pleasures and whatnot,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then be able to see like, man, this is just not satisfying. And like you're doing what we talked about last time, where it's, working with our resistance.
Yeah.
We were mentioning that. And so it sounds like really this morning you use that knowledge that you gained from that resistance the day before to
Yeah.
say, hey, wait a minute, I know this feeling. It
I
doesn't take
know.
me in a good direction.
Dude, like if I'm up on the, like you're up on a mountain and maybe it's like a little gravelly or something, right? And you've gotten a few firm, secure holes, but like if I step wrong, I'm gonna slide way down here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I so don't want that slide, Jack. I'm just like, no, 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 no. I value too much this path that I'm on. I like the work that I've already done to get up here. I do not want to it's a little backsliding or whatever you want to call it. I think probably normal. And if it happens, it happens. But at the same time, like if I can avoid that, I want to.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's a sign too, though, that like your skill has developed you're developing your skill so that, you're having a little bit of a backslide just kind of naturally because life is so hard right now.
Mm.
So you kind of skip those days, and yet you're on your footing, you're on your path, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're aware of what you're doing, which is really, I think that is like the key element, right?
That is
Um,
the key element.
yeah,
That awareness is something quite amazing. Just being there for the whole thing, watching it, seeing it, and being aware, like, yes, this is what's happening. I have missed my practice. I can watch my mind and be like, look at you, look at how it's tempted to go towards old coping patterns, all of that stuff. And that awareness, really, I think opens up the possibility for some compassionate action, right? So I know I think it was our friend Matthew who said this to me one time. He said, uh, renunciation is what compassion looks like from the inside. I think it was something to that effect. And I kind of get it, where I'm like, yeah, actually there's like a rising compassion of like, no, you don't want those things. Like
yeah,
that's not gonna, you already know that's not helpful to you, right? The Ben and Jerry's is bad enough. The rest of it's even worse.
yeah. Yeah, big time.
Not that
Oh
there's anything wrong with Ben and Jerry's. I'm not knocking it. I'm
yeah.
just just saying.
And hey,
Yeah.
you went for the non-dairy too, so added
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
Or
But
maybe less points extracted.
you'd think I got points for it, but the problem is, you see, it was made out of almond milk, which uses more water resources than we really need.
True. Is it true? I feel like that's propaganda put out by the meat industry.
But yeah, I assuage my guilt a little bit by going non-dairy.
Right, right. Nice.
Plus the amount of sugar and fat in there anyway, there's no, they could make it out of like anything and it would still
Yep.
be
Oh yeah, for sure.
so that's me. That's what's going on here. Yeah.
Yay.
What about
Thanks
you,
for
Jack?
sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am, I don't know, maybe I'm in a little bit of a backslide kind of awareness time as well. I try my best not to compare what my current state of like training is to like previous states that I feel like were better. Just because I've gotten like feedback from Llama that like just don't do that. Just don't. Um, it's good to look back and kind of compare in terms of like how have I grown, like what's different, what changes have I made. But he just kind of gave me that feedback, like just because you did that at one point, doesn't mean that that's what you should be doing now, or like just focus on what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's still very hard for me because I'm a perfectionist. I'm not kind of a perfectionist. I am a perfectionist. And there have been times in my training where I do a half an hour in the morning, a half an hour at night, a tantric practice, Lamrim, like I'm really like type A dharma practitioner. And but that's not dharma if I'm just trying to be perfect, right? Like that's not. So anyways, I'm trying to just kind of be okay with what I'm doing right now, which is not anywhere near what it was for a while in the past. And I still get my shamatha in. I get a little bit of reading in here and there. Occasionally I'll do a tantric practice, but it's nowhere near every night. So as you can tell, probably in my voice and the way I'm speaking about it, I'm a little bit frustrated, like
Yeah.
I want to be really engaged with my practice because that's where I really feel like, I don't know, there's this feeling of like, oh, I'm onto something. I'm discovering, like all of these qualities that are inherent to our nature. And that's really exciting and beautiful. And so when I noticed kind of like more irritability and like frustration, that's just a sign that like, okay, maybe it's because I'm, not really fully engaging with my training. And I think that's the key part. It's not that I'm not doing all the things. It's that when I do sit, for whatever time I do, I'm not really present for it. And I'm not really trying to train my mind. I'm not really actively like applying antidotes and seeing where my mind's at. I'm just almost kind of sitting there in reverie, kind of like,
Yeah.
So that's where it's at,
Yeah. Your form's a little sloppy.
My form is sloppy. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I get
Yep.
it.
Yeah. And yeah, I was actually at Mount Rainier this last weekend for a couple of days. And that was very nice just to be by the big, beautiful mountain. I always feel a little bit more in touch with, just that kind of deep, timeless, but very like that's what I love about like mountains is that they feel so timeless and yet they're very time bound. Everything that you see is all about time. And so I kind of I got to go on a little bit of a fun meditation, like a kind of analytical meditation when I was by the river, where I was just sitting next to the water and noticing how everything there was the ocean and how the mountain itself was the ocean and that the ocean was the mountain, everything coming back to the ocean. And just imagining how this little bit of rock that I was, sitting next to was going to become the ocean. And it was, I love stuff like that. It's just so beautiful and helps me kind of reconnect to what I was sometimes think, is like, okay, it means that I'm I'm so small, and that's really wonderful, but I think too that like, oh, I am part of this, like both time bound and
Yeah,
timeless. Like I am the
yeah,
mountain, I am the ocean, and so uh yeah, I'm both very small and then also part of everything. And so yeah,
right.
it, it
Yeah,
was
it's
it was lovely.
that is gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Exactly that. It's on the one hand, you're this tiny little atom in the grand scheme of things, and on the other, you are the totality itself.
Yeah.
It's wide open that way. That's it. I love those types of analytical meditations, and it sounds like a somewhat poetic one as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like experiential poetry. Have you
Wow.
ever done have you ever, so I was thinking like, sometimes like what I notice when my practice or my training rather, like when it gets a little bit, let's just say my form gets a little sloppy, I notice that sometimes just changing to a different form of training slightly will modify, make it better. And it made me think, Susan Farrar had a while ago, she led a meditation about being a mountain.
Mm,
Did you ever do that?
no,
No.
I'm gonna look it up.
It's quite, so I was just going to say, maybe next time you meditate, maybe you can become Mount Rainier in the meditation and experience both the solid, permanent, stable, always there for so long sort of unmoving mountain, and also the superficial water flowing, trees growing, rock sliding mountain as well. I thought it was a beautiful meditation. I remember when she had us go through several different exercises, and one of them was a mountain meditation. She might even have some written instructions if you email her, but it was really great. Maybe next time you can be Mount Rainier.
That's great. I love that. Well, I have such like a love affair with Mount Rainier. So yeah, becoming the mountain would be fabulous.
Yeah, yeah. You could do it right now in this lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and another thing that's been a little bit of a thread the last week that's related to that, I've started reading this book by Joanna Macy. Do you know Joanna Macy? So she's this teacher, she's Buddhist, but she's also like kind of like an eco-feminist, just really rad activist. And this book that she wrote, it's like, oh gosh, I wish I had it in front of me, like reconnecting to something. And it's all these practices for us to like reconnect to our world and to each other. And it was written 25 years ago, but
Oh
it
wow.
is so it's almost as though it were written today, with how kind of spot on it is around like climate change and just the very dire circumstances we're in.
Yeah.
um and I think one of the meditations in there is about being a mountain. And so yeah, it's really exciting. And I do think that sometimes when I'm feeling kind of detached or like poor form, it's because I'm not remembering the very kind of uh, profound nature of my existence here. And so nature really helps me connect to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And activism really helps me connect to that too. And so I'm excited to see how this book might merge those things together. Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's good.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
hope that you'll report back to us.
Yeah. And I was also thinking too, if there's anyone listening who has like done any trainings with Joanna Macy, or just done her, work that reconnects kind of program, let us know, because I think that would be a great interview.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Fantastic.
sweet.
Cool.
Well, should we, I know we're already moving on time. Oh my gosh. We can chat.
Yeah, we can. We know how
Yeah.
to talk.
Yeah. Should we check out some Lojong?
Let's do it. We are going to
Right.
head over to the RLSG.
RLSG, Earlsk.
Yep. And I'll press the button. Here we go.
All right. Ooh, I like this one. So Lojong's slogan 31, don't react on impulse to critical remarks. Gosh, that's one that I think I really need to like tattoo on my heart or something. So let's see. Tralek Kyebgon says, this slogan relates to our anger and the impulsive responses we make when we are completely filled with aggression. Its immediate concern is the ways we lash out at others over derogatory remarks made about us. Words carry enormous power. We must be sensitive to how we express ourselves and resist the temptation to follow our impulses and jump to conclusions about what others say. We should not think our ears are neutral receptors whose sole purpose is to receive information in an unadulterated fashion. We often hear what we want to hear, or even what we are afraid of hearing, because our receptivity is so intermingled with our fears, desires, and expectations. The very idea that someone said something disagreeable is enough to make us angry. These days, we are constantly confronted with phenomena such as road rage, where every little aggression, imagined or not, compels us to become physically or verbally abusive. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That
That
is
one
so
gets me.
true. I like that, it's true, right? Like with this idea that our ears are these neutral receptors, we do sort of treat it that way. And we think that what we hear is actually what is being said,
Right.
right? Or what we see is actually is really what's happening. One of my favorite things to do is nowadays text messaging is ubiquitous. Everyone does it all the time, and I've noticed a lot of times with friends and family, they'll get all upset. So I sometimes me too, but I usually notice it most with other people. They'll say, oh, can you believe it, that bleepity bleep, look at what they said. And then they'll read a text message,
Yeah.
and the inflection and the tone and everything it will sound atrocious. It will sound like that person is like a horrible good for nothing who hates
Right.
them and all of this, right? And then I'll listen to it, and then I'll say, oh man, wow, I can see, given the way that you read that, I can see why you would feel that way. Do you mind if I read it myself? I want to see it. And they'll hand me their phone, and I'll see the text message, and then I'll read it in a different tone, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm not involved, I don't know the person or whatever, and so whatever, I'll just read it in a slightly different tone. And then of course the other person, whoever it is that started the whole thing off, is usually kind of pissed at me,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because actually they heard what they heard, and they just know
They know it.
it is the
Yeah.
way that they think it is, right? And so that very notion that it isn't the way they think it is causes also a reaction, right?
Totally.
Yeah, so like it's almost like people want to be criticized and put down and when like for the most part, like a lot of times people don't even care that much. They're not trying to
Right.
anything. A lot
They're
of times
not
they're just
thinking
trying to
about
yeah, they're
you.
just trying to communicate something. It doesn't mean anything,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that one. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up texting. Because that honestly, I feel like one of the reasons why that land project I was involved in that fell apart
Yeah.
was because of miscommunication over text message,
Oof.
where it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we just didn't know each other well enough. Even people who really know each other
Oh yeah.
really misread things, right? But like
Yep.
we were just like so confused. And I kept, asking like, hey, can we talk about this stuff like only in person rather than over text? But then that made people mad,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, so much can happen over text message. So much can happen even with just like nonverbal like grunts, like there's times where like if someone says like a huh or like a
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, it's like I'm reading a whole narrative into that about how you think I'm like crazy or you think I'm stupid or you think I don't know what I'm doing,
It's true. It's true, man. It's oh my God, right? Like
Yeah,
it happened, both it happens in the sense that I do the exact same thing.
yeah,
And oftentimes, what's good, the noises or the posture or whatever, just the body language or the choice of words that I use. Oh man, I so many times misinterpreted, and I know that it's happening to me all the time too, that I'm totally misinterpreting what a person is saying,
Yeah.
and that if I really we don't really give each other the benefit of the doubt, you
Oh
know.
no.
There's so many times, whether, even as Charlie Kabgyan says here about, about phenomena such as road rage, right? Like, people, for the most part, are not trying to be jerks. Most people are just they're just trying to get to where they're going. They're just trying to get their job done. They're just trying to communicate some bit of information. No one is actually out to get you, right? Like,
Right.
for the most part. And if someone is out to get you, it will be abundantly clear,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, if
Probably
you
their
have to
problem. Yeah.
right, if you have to interpret it, that interpretation guaranteed. There, actually, think about this. There's no way that an interpretation is anything other than false. It is not the truth of what's going on. It's always a story.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Speaking of road rage, and
Uh-oh.
reading into people, and I had another moment of being like, oh, I'm catching myself in the moment.
Yeah.
This is silly. Of I was driving home, and I'm kind of merging into these two lanes merge into one, and this big truck comes like barreling over onto the left lane, which is where I'm merging into. They've got they're a lifted truck, they've got huge wheels and stuff.
Dodge Ram 4x4.
Yeah. And I saw in my mind, I was like, I'm seeing right now that I don't want to let that person in front of me.
That's right.
And you know what, it's even boring right now, but I'm just gonna get in front of them because I feel like it, and I know
Yeah.
that that's dumb, but I'm still doing it. So
Yeah.
I slammed on the gas and tried to get in front of them, but of course they have a majorly more powered vehicle than I do, and so they got in front of me, and I was just like, "Yep, this is boring." And what did I do?
Right.
I just kind of increase that person's aggression, and didn't have any fun myself. So
No. Oh my gosh.
and of course, I had this interpretation of that person
Of
that
course.
kind of this is just an asshole bro in a truck,
Yeah. Yeah.
which granted,
Maybe.
maybe
Maybe. Maybe.
maybe they were trying to get home because something bad happened. I don't know, but
Maybe they were borrowing the truck from somebody else in order to get to an emergency.
there you go. Okay, we'll do that one. But either way, it was the whole
Yeah.
story was here of I don't
Yeah.
want to let that person in front of you because they're just inherently a jerk.
Okay, so I feel like this is actually a surprisingly good segue into the topic.
Interesting. Great.
Yeah, because so what we're talking about is dealing with uncertainty, right? And the thing is that there's all kinds of sort of remarks about certainty, right? The only thing that's certain is death and taxes, or whatever. Uncertainty is the only certainty. That kind of language, right? So we actually, there's this sort of recognition deep down inside that there isn't actually much certainty. Right. And I think I may have mentioned this before. I remember I had a darshan with Lama where he was like, certainty is a really helpful tool. So, for example, religious certainty allows a lot to be accomplished. If you know for a fact, it's a wonderful, powerful tool for doing things. But it doesn't mean that it's true. Right, it just means that it's a framework of understanding and of behaving, and that actually it's not that there are no certainties, right? So within Buddhism, there are certainties, right? We talk about them. We talk about, for example, the Four Noble Truths. A truth would be something that is certain. We talk about things like interdependence or impermanence, emptiness, no self. Those are things upon examination that we can't actually discover, but they seem certain, right? Like the more that we examine
them with our experiences.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There's certainty around that. So there are some certainties, but for the most part, our lived relative experience is completely uncertain and it's entirely fabricated, right? It's conceptual and like everything. The story about the pickup driver, right?
Right.
This all these stories, who I am and how I relate to this world, who you are, our
Right. Yeah.
relationship, who you and I together are, right? All of these things, they're just a narrative. And there's not that that's wrong, because it can be helpful, right? If I'm certain that you, Jac, and I are friends, then that allows us to have a good conversation and have some trust and some camaraderie or whatever, right? And so like that's good. It lets us get some things done. But it may not be, it may or may not. I mean, I think we are, but yeah, but you know, like there isn't actually much certainty, and things that, like we talk about impermanence being a certainty. The fact of the matter is things do change.
Right.
Things change, man, right? Like everything that you thought is going to go away and is going to be different at some point. Like you were talking about your own practice and how it has changed, and that upon reflection you see it's different now than it was before. Well, right, the same, what was it, Heraclitus who said the same man doesn't step into the same river twice, right? The same practitioner climbing up the path, is not the same practitioner, and they're on a different point in the path. It's going to look different. It's
Yeah.
going to feel different. So both within our practice and within our ordinary lives, we're going to have life. It's going to prove this to us again and again by stripping us naked of all of these concepts. And the
Yeah.
more that we fight it, the more that we resist it, the more that we remain attached to the story, so and so is a jerk or whatever, like the more attached we are to these desirable things, or that we try to avoid the undesirable and ignore the rest, the more painful it is,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox there.
No, I mean, I know that it comes from a real kind of place of lived experience right now with what you're dealing with, where of course, especially I feel like sometimes around finances and also around, identity too, like our
Yeah,
careers, like we find so much certainty and stability in
that's
our
right.
careers, where it's like, okay, so not only are we getting our income, which is allowing us to live, to have a home, to keep a family, whatever it is, we also have the way that shapes how we see ourselves and
That's
how
right.
we think others see us, that's our identity. And
Yeah,
yet, of course, that's 100% a story that we're all kind of crafting together, and that gets really shaken up when something like this happens, that this kind of major shift that is happening in your business. I'm sure those kind of narratives are getting a little bit like their feathers are ruffled right now.
yeah. Well, I think they're de-ruffling a little bit. But it is exactly what you said. There's a narrative around our careers, and our relationships to others, and those narratives are helpful. So, for example, in my case, for I don't know, a few decades now, my story, my own personal story is, yeah, I'm like an entrepreneurial businessman who's like ahead of the times with technology and knows how to leverage it for this particular industry. And I've also known, Jac, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I'm going to achieve financial success by means of this company, right? And that it's just around the corner. It's just right over there, right? Like just a little bit longer. It's right around the corner. It's going to be big. And me, my employees, my partners, we're all going to be so happy because all of a sudden there's going to be like money and success, and the whole world is going to be bowing at our feet. And this story this is when I talk about seeing karma, right? Seeing cause and effect in my life. I can actually see how I have banked on that story. So that certainty, I'm not saying it's bad. It has been helpful, right? But it
Right.
doesn't mean that it's true. It
Right.
just means that it was helpful. It was my framework of understanding and my reference when I was really trying to figure out like what I'm doing here. And in that sense, helpful, but not true. And now life is actually, it's not saying that it's not true either. Actually,
Mhm.
there's no indication that stuff is not true. It just is shifting because it's part of this samsaric world. It's a relative thing. It's compounded, right? It's composed of many different things, and that all of that stuff is changing all the time. And so it's really quite a beautiful thing, actually, to be able to say, like, oh, right, those aren't even my feathers that got ruffled,
Yeah.
right? They were just some feathers that I stuck onto me to pretend like I was that thing. But now that they're all ruffled and they're falling off or whatever, I can see myself a little bit clearer. So when the narrative, when the story, life is kind of, when it pulls the rug out, I'm not just saying in this particular case, but it's going to do it again and again and again, right? Those are wonderful moments to
They are.
really see who and what we really are.
Right. Right. Yeah. So these moments that can be really terrifying if we have a fixed, a fixed notion of how things should be, or maybe that narrative we really, that narrative that's gotten us so far, we just stick to it, cling to it, as though like that is the reality. When that happens, that's where a lot of, you brought up this pain, that happens when we get super fixed, when we get really tight around a narrative. But if we can loosen up that knot a little bit, like we were
Yeah,
talking about earlier,
yeah,
and allow it to kind of disrupt our fixed identities, that can be really profound, dharma practice right there. And that was definitely something that happened with me, um, speaking about the land project again, where I really had this narrative of certainty around, like, I am a good, like, activist. I
right.
am, like, I care about social justice, and, this is my calling. And then when all of this stuff blew up, and, people told me, like, hey, the way that you're handling certain things, makes me uncomfortable, and there's, like, some white supremacy in the way that you're, like,
Yep.
dealing with things. I was just like, well, fuck, like, who am
Yeah.
I? Like, and but what was great is that, like, by that time I had already, been practicing for a few years and, like, meeting with Lama, and it was just such this moment of, like, wow, I really have no control over, over how other people's narratives of me pan out. And so this kind of, like, fixed, trying to find certainty within, like, these identities that I've really found comfort in, and like, not just comfort, but like excitement, like, and engagement.
Yeah.
And they're, again, yeah, they're not, they're helpful, but they're not necessarily real. And they're shifting.
That's
um
right.
and so that was just really powerful for me, because it pointed out what, I get stuck on, which is very much reputation and praise. And when I receive the opposite of those, that's really scary for me. And so
Yeah.
it was this moment of being like, oh wow, there's people who, like, see me as racist. Like, wow, this can really, like, okay, I just have to accept that. Holy shit, and it was really good for me, to just let that tear down this
Yeah.
kind of permanent identity that I've been crafting for, well, millennia, but in this lifetime.
Yeah. It's refreshing. It's
It
it's it's
is.
it's a weird sort of catharsis, right? Where when we're like, oh, you think I'm that? And your perspective is valid, actually, right? Like
Yeah.
whether I agree with, my own perspective on myself isn't the same as yours. So, but your perspective is valid, right? Like possibly, yeah. From I can see how you think I might be a white supremacist. I
Right.
mean, deep down inside, I don't think I am,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but like that's a a beautiful story, I think, to illustrate what we're talking about is like who you think you are in relation to those people. I mean, you went into that land deal thinking that even if you didn't know these people, they were at least good and, similarly minded and wanting sort of the same things and whatever. There was common ground between you. And probably you thought that they thought that you were a decent human being and not a white supremacist and all this, right?
Yeah, of
Yeah, and
course
then all of
so.
a sudden, like you start texting each other, and boom, what do you know? Like the next thing is like everyone's like pointing the finger and describing each other in these less than pleasant terms.
Right. Yeah. And that I love how this is really tying back into our Lojong slogan, because I think so, so often we hear criticism in people and what people are saying, or we hear something, negative or whatever, because like we have such a certain notion about who we are. And so anything that is kind of coming in that feels like off about that or that
Yeah,
conflicts with it, we're just like, no, we'll just total reject it. Right.
right, right.
Um, and so that is super interesting to see that as well, that like, okay, this my inability to receive criticism or kind of critique is because I have such a fixed kind of notion of who I am or how people should see me, when in actuality, like allowing for that uncertainty kind of breaks us open to be like, oh, okay, wow, this is uh, things are not how how I saw them. And
Right.
and how great is that, right? Because um we are interdependent creatures. We're not these kind of solo independent just fixtures apart from everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that it's really mind opening and balancing when we're able to consider perspectives other than our own by realizing that our own story, our own perspective is a filtered version. It's filtered through our narrative, the one that we created, right, about ourselves, and it's through our ego, so to speak, right? That's what we filtered the experience through. And everybody else is also filtering experience through their own filter, right? So it's going to taste different. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different because
Oh.
whatever, those filters are different. They're blocking some things that are not being blocked somewhere else. And that when we can recognize that, it actually allows us to bridge the gap between us and to see like, oh, right, like it's not a me versus them, it doesn't have to be that way, and that their perspective is just as invalid as mine, right? It's just as much bullshit
Yeah.
as my perspective. It's all of them may be helpful in some sense, but there are also times when it's not helpful. And I think that that's really, I think, a helpful way of looking at these egoic narratives is like, is it helping? Is the story helping me, to live in a more compassionate, connected, life embracing way? And if it's not, if it's getting in the way, then maybe that should be dropped,
Mm.
or at least
Mhm.
be allowed to flex a little bit.
Yeah, I like that a lot because I think I a lot of times, my tendency is to be like, okay, so the Dharma tells me that, identity isn't fixed. So then go to the exact opposite, like drop all identity, drop everything, right? But that's not what the Dharma is asking us to do. It's asking us to really be in the gray, to be in that which, because I think that other end of it of like drop all identity is trying to find certainty again.
It
It's
is.
trying to say like, okay, well that's then it's just the opposite. It's another permanent that nothing exists. But that's nihilism, right? And so we have
Right.
to come back to that things do exist, but
That's
they
right.
just exist relatively and all in dependence with everything else. And so I love that idea that, okay, these narratives that we're using, it's almost like we're putting on clothes, we're
Yep.
just we're adopting this because it's useful. We don't need to make it into this fixture. But we also don't want to go to the other side of things and drop everything, because that's not helpful.
Right. Well, and what you're pointing to is the middle way, right? So, it's helpful when we're really fixated on the conceptual sort of narrative and the way things are, and we know the truth about that person and this event and these experiences. When we're fixated by the details like that, and it's not helpful, then it's helpful to balance towards the absolute, right? Towards emptiness, towards impermanence, towards interdependence, like to really contemplate and sit with that, because it's like a balm, right? It heals, it feels better. We can correct a little bit, right? Into that direction. But then, like you were saying, if we go too far over in that direction, away from the relative, and we sort of want to be like, no, the relative world, it's all BS, and it doesn't, it's all not going to work. And like you said, that's nihilism. That's also not going to work, right? And that actually it's both and it's neither. We got to like somehow be right smack dab in the middle, and it's this constant sort of balancing. It's a back and forth, right? And so I think that's where, coming back to developing awareness is so important, because if we're aware, we can see, we're like, oh, I'm sort of suffering right now. I'm stressed right now. Well, why am I stressed out? Well, I'm stressed out because I'm buying into the certainty. I've created solidity here. And so then we can contemplate sort of the absolute truths a little bit, right? And rebalance. And then when we get all depressed and it's all meaningless and hopeless and whatever, then we can be like, well, come back to here, come back. This is me, this is my body. I'm this guy, and
Yeah,
it's that
yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think part of that, so developing awareness, and also, developing bodhicitta,
Oh,
right? And because every time I come back to that reminder that, we're all in this together. And so everyone's experiencing that fear of uncertainty, that wanting to just make things comfortable and solid and permanent again, to remind myself of that like, oh yeah, shit, like this is kind of our condition right now, and it's really hard. That really gives me a lot of kind of resolve, like to keep going. So that awareness and bodhicitta.
awareness and bodhicitta. I'm glad. Thank you for that reminder. And you just reminded me, because that resolve, that requires, it's like a form of bravery, right? And I wanted to, I wrote down this quote from Chogyam Trungpa that I thought maybe it'd be okay to end with.
Yeah.
Um, it has to do with a spiritual warrior, but in this case, the warrior is one who is brave, right? So I'm just going to read the quote. It says, "The essence of warriorship, or the essence of human bravery, is refusing to give up on anyone or anything. We can never say that we're simply falling to pieces or that anyone else is. We can never say that about the world either. Within our lifetime, there will be great problems in the world, but let us make sure that within our lifetime, no disasters happen. We can prevent them. It's up to us. We can save the world from destruction," right? And I think
Mm,
that when things are uncertain, when things do feel like they're falling apart, there is, with that awareness, with that compassion, right, with the right view, we can apply ourselves, right? And we can avoid the catastrophe that we're so certain is right around the corner, right? Like we can actually, yeah, sure, problems, right? Yeah, difficulties, sure, but we got this. We can make it
yeah.
work.
Yeah. And I'm glad we ended with that, because, if there is one thing that I am certain about, is that when I really apply the Dharma, it works.
Works.
It's real. Like when
Yeah,
um
yeah.
uh I see the effects, in my life, and the effects it has on others. So
I can
um
see the effect just right now in this conversation with you,
I
right? From
know.
beginning to end.
Absolutely. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Hey,
Daniel, this has been really, really awesome
yeah.
to talk with you. And thank you for bringing, where you're at right now, because it really kind of illuminates it in ways that make it real for us. So
Yeah, thanks for listening and for talking it through, and for bringing awareness and compassion into the equation.
yes, yay. Well, I'm looking forward to next week, and
Same.
thank you to everybody. Take good care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.